Okay. Welcome everybody to our Q&A session. I really hope that the video you've gotten to watch this week has helped you with some of the library questions that you might have had, but we wanted to be sure to still have this live meeting. That way, if you have any questions you either still have outstanding or you want something explained better, or you just come up with something new that hasn't been addressed, we want you to be able to ask those questions. At this time, does anybody want to start out with a question that they might have? If there aren't immediate
Elizabeth,
questions, yeah, go ahead.
Elizabeth, this is Alma.
Yeah.
I had a question on the web resource. I guess I was looking through Google Scholar, and then I just wondered, because when I click on that, it shoots me off over to like a Google search, and then it gives me different articles, like one that I was practicing with for this week's assignment. It didn't give me the exact wording, and so I wondered if when I click on any of those other ones, is that what you all mean by web resource, that it can go through Google Scholar and that'll take me somewhere else, and if that's acceptable?
Diane can certainly clarify this, but I would say not exactly. It depends on what it is you're getting a hold of. So for instance, what often happens with Google Scholar, and I apologize, some of this might be a little repetitious from what you saw in the video, but what Google Scholar does is it scours what it can and it brings back sources, and some of those things that it scours are publishers' websites. And so it will come back and sometimes give you scholarly research articles, which is not, sometimes it's really helpful for you to start discovering like what the different key terms are and those kinds of things. But oftentimes when somebody says a web resource, let's say you're doing research on the effects of social media on politics, what often they're looking for is something beyond the scholarly material, but maybe something that's a website that would set up in some way. Like perhaps a political, as unbiased as you can get in politics, maybe something political that would explain that kind of thing, or maybe something in the social media realm that explains the two things together, or even a website with statistics. It's something that you'll have to kind of suss out with like your online, like you'll have to analyze it carefully to be sure that it's something that would be useful in a scholarly paper. But usually web resource is something that is not found specifically in the scholarly data. Did you have something to add to that, Diane?
Yes, just quickly. Yeah, like a lot of times, like universities will sponsor websites if it's a major topic of interest. So for example, if you're interested in cross-cultural comm, University of Mexico has an excellent source. If you're interested in marital communication, University of Washington with John Gottman has a great source. So you just have to search for something like that. Pew Research reports.
Okay.
Alma, what's your topic again?
Women in leadership.
Okay. Yeah, so any website that deals with leadership or women in organization, or even some articles on, you know, the number of women in leadership roles or something like that, that you might want to add. Does that help? So
yes,
I would go to would you go to Google, Elizabeth?
You certainly could, and I guess to piggyback off of what you're saying, some of what you're going to be locating is professional literature that's not necessarily peer reviewed. So in other words, if you find a professional organization that is having a conversation, the difference between, let me back up for a second. Scholarly material is stuff that's written by scholars, and a more narrow subset of that is peer reviewed. And the peer reviewed oftentimes is what you're going for in the databases. You find other things besides peer reviewed in the databases, but to to speak to the scholarly but not necessarily peer-reviewed, one subsection of scholarly is trade material. And what that basically is people within the trade talking about ideas and concepts that they're currently exploring. So it may be person A reporting out that, you know, maybe they're trying a new leadership style. It seems to be effective among women, and here's how they're approaching it. And that might be something that you would find on a leadership site, a communication site. It could be an association's website, a university's website. And it's not that it's not scholarly, it just hasn't gone through the peer review process. And it's more talking about the nuts and bolts of how they're going to go about it, as opposed to here's a study we did and here's the statistics and the results.
Got it.
Does that kind of help?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So it's still.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's still scholarly. It's just not gone through the whole, put it in front of a panel of my peers, gone through that whole process kind of thing.
Got it. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a great question.
Okay, so this is Verna.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, and I just want to make sure that I'm on the right track here. So today, I took another look at the YouTube from last week, and then I went on the White Library, and then I found the Communication and Mass Media Complete Database, and then I put in, the professor was concerned whether I would be able to find enough resources. So when I searched for nonverbal communication with the parentheses like you suggested. Then I searched body language and gestures. Then I went and I refined the search to full text and peer-reviewed articles. And I did come up with a lot of sources. So I chose about 10 of them. And you remember how you said, go look at the table of contents to see if it had relevant articles in it. So is that what you're looking for in terms of our text that we're using and that we're citing? Is that what you're looking for as good enough for our final project, for our portfolios?
I'm not 100% sure. I think you may be crossing a couple different assignments. Please do correct me if I'm wrong. The question that had to do with the table of contents was addressing where sometimes journal issues will have a theme throughout the issue, and part of what the discussion board was wanting you to see is, okay, I found this article with my keywords. What does the table of contents look like? Is there something else for me to discover from the other things that are in this issue? As far as for the paper itself, you won't necessarily pull multiple articles out of the same issue for your paper. It depends on whether or not it's a themed issue. So when you do your search and you do your refinement, you may find that your results are coming from several different sources. But part of the exercise on the message boards, or on the discussion board rather, is just to get you getting familiar with the structure of the database and how the contents of an issue are displayed. You lose a lot of context when you go digital, because we're so used to, even though there's a lot that have been digital for a while, when you take that and you put it online, it doesn't seem to be a whole unit anymore, but it still is, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the reason we practice going through that, so you can see, okay, there really is a whole issue here. This is how I would back up and take a look at everything that's in this issue, and it may or may not be a thematic issue. When you do your research, though, you will not necessarily have to back up and look at your table of contents. But it's a worthwhile practice to see if there's something else in that issue to help you discover it. Because sometimes when we use certain keywords, especially when we're learning the jargon of something that's new to us and they speak in professional language, sometimes our keywords will pull up one article and not another, but they're both relative. So it's helpful just to get you in the practice of just looking through the information in different ways.
I got you. Okay.
Hopefully that helps, but if that leads to more questions, certainly let me know.
Okay.
Can I ask Verna a real quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Verna, so for your portfolio topic, you're selecting nonverbal communication and gestures, is that correct?
Yes, it was between that one and gender differences in communication.
Okay.
But I prefer the nonverbal communication and gestures topic.
Okay. All right. Now, when you find those articles in our Communication Mass Media Complete database, have you looked at the articles and make sure at least some of them are reporting on like an experiment or a survey or something like that?
Yes, they are scholarly, they are using data, and they are reporting from experiments. I found about 5 that have all of the requirements needed for the portfolio.
In terms of some research-based articles, correct?
Yes.
Now, are you putting all this into a context, or because nonverbal communication and gestures has been studied for a long time. But if you're looking at how nonverbal and gestures are used in businesses or church, or do you know what I'm trying to say?
So what you're trying to say is you want me to narrow down the topic or the theme. For instance, the nonverbal cues in gender, or nonverbal cues in gender in a professional setting, something like that is what you're asking.
Because I'm
right?
just not thinking you're going to find so much that deals back with 1970s developing taxonomies of gestures. And so I would look through the most recent ones and see what themes and maybe select from there. But I think those are good choices. You know, how body movement can be used in businesses or presentations, or gender differences or something like that. Or I think you're going to feel overwhelmed in terms of the number of sources.
Then I would like to refine it to gender differences in nonverbal communication. And then that way I'm combining my first choice with my second choice.
That's workable. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
So I realize that you're on audio, Verna, and so you won't see this right now, but if I may, I want to kind of give you an example of what that might look like. Are you able to see my screen, Diane?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So if I go on down to article databases, and I click this drop down and I choose communication. So I'm going to click here on communication and mass media complete. And if I just stick with this database, I'm pausing because it's thinking. So what
I have that pulled up right now in front of me.
Excellent. So something that we might try when, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. When you're in a database that specializes in something such as communication, you can try it with and without the word communication. If you were in something like business, for instance, you would want to say communication because that's not its specialization. So what I'm going to suggest is just to start with on this one, since we're in communication and mass media complete, you might say nonverbal. And what I'm doing is I'm putting, we're going to combine, we're going to say nonverbal is one word, the capital O, capital R as a command, or non-dash verbal, so that we can capture both of those potential instances. And we're putting them in parentheses to tell the database this one or this one is okay, as opposed to the quotations where we're telling it has to appear as a phrase. You'll see it when you see the video if you can't see it right now. And then in the second line, we could say gender difference with a star in case there's difference or differences. And I'm going to also say or gender role with a star.
Or sex differences, maybe.
Yes. Excellent point. And again, the asterisk to capture different variations on the ending. So if I do this without clicking full text, let's make sure peer reviewed is checkmarked, however. So we'll come down here and click scholarly peer reviewed journals. And when I hit search, it comes back and it gives me 129 different responses based on what I told it. And we can skim through here and see if these are what we're after. When I look to the left, you'll see that some of the more prominent limiters appear, so that if you need to manipulate this a little bit further, you certainly can. For example, I see 1975 to 2018. I'm going to bring this up to 2013 to 2018, and that drops me to 14. If I don't like that, I can broaden it back out. We can easily do that by just clicking up here. It shows you what you've been doing so far in the search, and you can click an X next to something and make that go away and go back to what you were just on. But that being said, you can come through here, you can see what makes sense and what doesn't for you, and continue to refine the terms from here.
Okay.
So certainly play with that, play with the terms, and even change up the terms that I put here and see what it does for you. In fact, I'm going to take out the parentheses and see if it makes any difference, because sometimes it's just finicky like that. Same on that one. Nope, same. So in this particular case, it didn't make any expanding kind of difference at all. So you might play with that and see if that kind of gives you what you want. And if not, you can continue to play. And then you can also switch databases as well to communication abstracts. That one is going to have a lot less full text in it. But you can certainly get your library loan those, especially since your project isn't due for a few weeks yet.
Okay.
Okay.
And just one other suggestion is that we have a specific journal called Journal of Nonverbal Communication. And I would definitely look through that journal, the table of contents, and see if there's gender differences in that.
And let's demonstrate that as well, because they're just this week getting used to the idea that we have a way to look up the journals. So let's show them how, I'll show them how you can do that too. So in some of the threads I had mentioned, someone had wisely pointed out that you can go to search and go down to journal titles. And this, you can use this for a variety of reasons. I like to liken this to kind of doing a reverse search when you know the result of something, but you don't know where it came from. So for example, maybe your professor says, this article exists, but I don't know where it is or if the library has it. You're kind of searching backwards. In this case, we know that a particular journal exists, but we don't know what specific contents are in it. So one of the things Diane mentioned was the journal called Gender Roles. And for example, as I start to type this, it will give me suggestions of things that we have, such as Gender and Education, Journal of Gender Studies, Gender and Behavior, Gender Issues, Gender and Society, and so on. So if let's say I wanted to look at this Gender Issues magazine, or journal rather, and I click on that, I can either search for keywords within this publication from right here on this screen, or to see the table of contents, I can click this plus, it says full text access, and it will show me which databases have this in full text. And I probably, especially since I'm trying to discover like recent things, I'm going to want the ones with the broadest coverage, especially into the present. You can see, when you see the screen, you'll see that some of them cut off at 2000. We want something that's more current than that. So look for the ones that say to the present with the full text delay of 1 year, since we don't have them clear up to the current. So this will show us probably full text up to, let's see, this is June 2018, so probably May or June of 2017 is the full text that will probably index up to the present. You can still interlibrary loan more current things. As a for instance, though, if I click on the sociology database link down here, it's going to pull up that specific journal in ProQuest in the database that I clicked. And down here where it says browse specific issues, here's how we get to a table of contents of a current issue. So if I click and expand these years, now we remember we won't have access to 2018 in full text. We can still look at the articles that are here. I can click right now on June. Let's pick this most recent volume, 35 issue 2. This is the table of contents. So it's a list of articles, but what it's telling you is this is the list of articles that were published in this issue. So this is the same, even though it doesn't look like what you're used to seeing as a table of contents, that's what this is. So for example, we've got everything from adolescent rampage school shootings, responses to failing masculinity performances by already troubled boys, to femininity and choice of college major. So you're probably going to want to use the search feature back on the previous screen where it says search within this publication. But this is how you would get to seeing table of contents. It could just browse through different issues. And likewise, this is called the breadcrumb trail, and the database is up here where you see, let me go back again, where you see this trail of, back up computer, come on, here we go. Right up here where it says browse issues and shows you the year ranges to the specific year to the month. You can back up, I can click on 2018 and go back to the 2018 list and choose a different issue from here and go back and forth like that to look through different issues as though you're pulling it off the shelf and opening it up and thumbing through it. So that's a way you can just kind of browse a particular journal within the databases.
Found it, and I'm following along, and I'm in the nonverbal communication journal, checking it out.
Okay.
Awesome.
Good.
So certainly when you look at the nonverbal communication journal, then you can search gender specifically.
Found it.
Yeah. And you'll find some really cool things that way too.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Make sure that as you're combing through those articles, when you are noticing certain themes or phrases that coincide with what you're after, when a light bulb goes off, jot that down, and then you can go back to the Communication and Mass Media Complete and throw those at the databases and see what that gives you. Because again, if they're using terms within the field and we're just learning them, they'll probably show you some things that you haven't thought of before.
Right. Thank you.
You bet. Anybody else have some questions for us tonight?
I'll ask one then. Michael?
Yeah.
So are you leaning towards parents and technology and relationships, or have you decided your topic yet?
I haven't fully decided. I think I'm going to go with the first one and do what was the like teacher gender difference in instruction.
Okay. And so how have you tried our database yet?
Yeah, I've been looking through. I've been looking for all three of them. I think I found a pretty decent amount just on how gender difference affects it. The hard part is distinguishing between a communications issue and a behavioral issue.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like I know there's like gender differences in dealing with, inappropriate behavior in the classroom and things like that. But I think any gender differences in communication style would work. You definitely are going to also want to look at communication education. That's a journal in our field that is devoted strictly to communication within the classroom situation.
Yeah.
So how Elizabeth just showed how to do the journals, I would definitely look at that, because that's likely where your research would be published. And I think that's a good strategy to kind of look at, where do you want to publish? Be sure that you look in that particular journal.
Sure.
But gender differences in the classroom is, you'll definitely find stuff in that in our journals. So
yeah.
That's my main concern, is that students are looking this whole week and then it's time to find 4 research-based articles and not able to find them. Yeah, look at how many Elizabeth just pulled up on gender differences in the classroom. So, and you might need to at least group them in terms of, if you're talking about the gender differences in terms of the instructor or gender differences in the students.
Mm-hmm.
Different ways to go about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good topic. Heather, what about you?
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I I'm going to move away from the workshop topic just because there's not a lot on that, but I do want to do something with the church and media. So I still think it was too specific how I was originally interested in like streaming services and like how that affects, like if that is overall positive or negative, I guess. So I think I need to make it a little bit more general. So I'm trying to figure that out. I don't know if I need to go into like social media or the websites too, but yeah, so somehow I need to like figure out how to make it specific but not too specific, I guess.
So the use of like media in church?
Yeah, like the reason I had the idea in the first place was because I just started wondering about with churches streaming their services now, if that overall is causing people to just stay home more. I mean, because it's a really good thing for people who are sick or, you know, can't make it to church for whatever reason. But I was wondering, is it actually like disconnecting people who are just then, oh, I'll just watch church online. But I didn't really find anything like about that at all. So I don't know. So I think I need to make it more general.
Yeah, I'm wondering, well, Elizabeth is doing, do you see her?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so there's a study. In Journal of Media and Religion is a good one too. Marketing Religion Online.
Okay.
Online Religion and Religion Online, Reforming Web-Based Communications, something like that. Yeah, it looks like Journal of Media and Religion seems good.
Okay.
And something
and then, you know, another good strategy too is once you find 2 or 3 strong articles, you can look in their reference list. And that's where interlibrary loan might come in, or having to coming from another database, which I'm okay with as long as some of these key articles. So scholars in our field are indeed interested in this, and the audience would be those interested in, you know, it looks like Journal of Media and Religion would be a great journal that would be interested in your work.
Okay.
And I might point out too that let's say that you decided that this was kind of like a really big deal in what you're trying to do. So we simply clicked on the title and we can take a look at this abstract, and we're already seeing some different phrases pop out where they're saying religion online, online religion.
Yeah.
Also congregational churches -- computer network resources. This is a specific subject line. If I click this, it's going to tell me about other articles with the same phrasing in their subject line. And in this case, there's just the one, but sometimes it's worth checking out to see if there's other things that reflect those kinds of ideas.
Okay.
And sometimes they'll label it a little bit differently between them. So keep looking for those different things. But maybe if I say, we did church and online, we can switch that to religion.
Okay.
And online. And now we come up with 156. Now, again, yeah. And that's just changing one word. So the great thing about this too is you might start looking at this and going, mental health and Islamic religion online. Okay, this is a little different than what I wanted. So what you can do is come over here then to subject, and the subject does 2 things. Number one, it does tell you the overarching theme or themes of an article, but it also provides specific language to make a unified way of finding similar things. So when you see it like this religion -- social aspects, that is a specific way that they wrote that in there, so it was easy to find it amongst them. And you start to discover those as you go along.
Okay.
It's not intuitive initially, it's something you pick up as you start to find like things. So for example, this is kind of interesting too, the divine online civic organizing, identity building, and internet fluency among different religious groups. Not exactly what you were talking about, but I thought it was just kind of eye-catching. If I hit subject and then show more, I can see from this group of 100+ articles what the different subjects are that are attached to these different articles. And what I can do then is let's see if we see something that kind of jumps out as far as attendance or anything else real quickly here. I'm not seeing that specifically with a quick skim. There's some other interesting ideas here.
Yeah.
But just like digital media, religious aspects, let's say you wanted to hone in on that. If I check mark that and say updates, it'll show us what these two are. If I don't like it, again, over here where it says find all of my search terms under refined results, I can just hit the X and it will take me back to that set of results if it narrowed it too much.
Okay.
Does that kind of help?
Yeah, I think I just need to keep looking and thinking about it.
Sure. Another thing too that you might want to do, because as with some of the others, you have a topic that crosses into more than one idea. If we come up here to where it says choose databases, we are currently in communication and mass media complete. But what this allows me to do is take a look at other databases offered specifically by this vendor, which is EBSCOhost.
Okay.
It won't cross over into ProQuest because it's a different vendor. But for example, since you're talking about religion, perhaps you want to also search Atlas Religion Database with Atlas Serials at the same time. And just kind of glancing through here. So when I say okay, now we're going to want to put communication as a term in there because now we're crossing into another database that's outside of our ideas. So now we're searching from both. And real quickly, you can see what database it just pulled this from. Kind of gives you an idea on who's holding the information that when you start finding more articles that align with what you're after, it kind of gives you an idea of which database is giving you more of what it is you're after.
Heather, there's actually more on online in church services, religion online, that I thought you might not need to narrow. I mean, to broaden.
Okay.
Because then after you find out what's already done on religion online communication or something like that, you know, and then the next step would be, well, what would you want to contribute to this area?
Right.
And so as long as, because one of the assignments later is you're going to have to abstract some research-based articles, as long as there's a handful of those, that's enough, because you're also going to get a book and a web resource. And and you can use other sources as long as people in communication are indeed interested in this. And it's clear from this search that I think you could make a case for what do we already know about you know, communication online in terms of our church services.
Okay. Do you think I shouldn't specify the religion then? Because I saw one about like Judaism, and like, do you think I should make it general that way? Or
I don't think that would matter, but that would be an argument you'd have to make. I mean, right now, because one of your claims might be something like, you know, religion, it has been looked at across denominations, and then you would describe the work that's been done in different denominations.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's a problem too if you can find too much research on your specific topic. Sometimes we go, well, why do you even need to research this topic? We already know so much about it.
Right,
so it's gonna be your unique contribution.
Okay.
So.
Okay, then I think I'll try it.
Yeah. Good topic.
Thanks.
Okay, who haven't we picked on yet, Elizabeth? My list isn't.
Let's see. Talk to Michael.
Danielle.
Yeah, I was going to say, me. I was thinking the two that I had chosen was the cultural approach to organizations and expectancy violations theory. And I think expectancy violations theory is probably a little too broad. I'd have to narrow that. So I think I'm going to do the cultural approach to organizations and kind of relate it back to my employer, kind of like what I had mentioned. So I think it would be a lot more relevant. So that's kind of what I'm leading towards.
So if you typed in, and maybe Elizabeth, do you mind typing this? If you type in like culture and organizations, you're going to get
a lot.
Too many, probably.
Okay.
So have you thought about how you might, like, are we looking at, you know, how to build culture in organizations, or? You thought more about, let's see, those little creating culture, right? Strategies for.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I had thought about it because that's a really big deal at my job right now,
Right.
going for like the Shingo prize. So I think, I don't know, I guess I didn't really think much about it. I didn't realize I needed to narrow it even more. But yeah, I guess basically building culture is kind of more what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think that's you know, it's a really big topic in organizational communication. Really
Okay.
big topic.
Yeah.
The importance of culture.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if I'm looking at Elizabeth's search here, if there's like one or two that says exactly what it is I want to do. Maybe creating culture or cultural identity in organizations. Would cultural identity work?
I don't know. I guess I'd have to dig into it a little bit deeper. I haven't gone into it too deep quite yet, but I might have to do that.
Culture. Negotiating the meanings of organizational identity in nonprofit organizations. When organizations attempt to brand. I don't know, Elizabeth, what would you, any thoughts on?
You're just looking for something that's going to address just creating and marketing a specific culture within an organization, right?
I don't know. I'm not sure what you mean, but I just kind of was thinking just literally just the culture of it, like what makes a good company to work for. I think the culture is a big part of it. So I don't know.
I'm going to approach this a little bit backwards just because there's a book I'm familiar with, and I wonder if you've heard of it too. Have you heard of a book called Fish?
I don't think
It
so.
has to do with organizational culture.
Okay.
Let me go to our books in media because I want to see what subjects that's labeled with. So what this is about in a nutshell is that basically what they've done, the Seattle fish market, actually it's the Pike Place Fish Market in the Pike Place, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They were trying to find a way basically to make work more fun and people getting together, and they basically created their own whole culture, and there's a book and a video that was created about how they did this. And let me try this title because I think that it's this one. Fish, a remarkable way to boost morale and improve results. And the subjects on this one are employee motivation and customer services. That's in the book catalog. Let me also flip out into WorldCat and see how they labeled it, because that might also help us in the same vein. So bear with me just a second. So if I go to books and I do that same title, a remarkable way to boost morale.
That might be a good book for you to interlibrary loan, Danielle.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I think the video is fun too. It's brief. It would be something you'd have to interlibrary loan. It might be a little tricky to get a hold of because it's used in organizations to teach.
Okay.
But that being said, let me take a look at where are my subjects at?
I just saw right there, same ones.
Yeah, same ones. And we can take those ideas back into the databases And again, it's kind of a, here we go. Actually, let's do this. Frontline employee motivation, participate in service innovation implementation. And we can see, as a for instance, if this was an article that you wanted to choose, we can see some of the different subjects in the databases that are being used to label this kind of article. And again, if you need to tweak that, of course, absolutely do that. But that's another way. If you know of a resource that would work or something, you can always take a look at how that's labeled and then take it into the databases.
Okay.
Does that kind of help you in thinking about it?
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, putting it as employee motivation, I think that's what I was thinking. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Also, if that's a book, absolutely. If this is a book you want to borrow, make sure it's not checked out. We can tell it's not checked out because it says status available if you haven't seen this already. And we can come right on up here and hit request. If you haven't done this before, you're going to type in first and last name and your student ID. And once you hit submit, I'll do it with mine. Oops. So it'll tell you that you're logged in. And then for pickup location, switch it to say mail to my home.
Okay.
And then once you hit submit, it will send the order to us so that we can pack it up and ship it off to you.
Okay.
I won't submit it because then I'll be requesting the book and I'll be taking it away.
From me. Yeah. Don't do that. Okay. That's awesome.
So it's just that simple. And when she ships it to you, I say she, our interlibrary loan person also ships our stuff as well. They'll ship it to you with a postage paid return label. So it'll be free for you to send it back. So if the packaging comes and it's not beat up, just pack it back in the same thing and it doesn't cost you anything to send it back.
Okay.
Recycle too, so.
Okay. Sounds good. Very cool.
Awesome.
Okay.
Who else has questions?
Kristen, can you hear us? I don't know if Kristen can hear us. I see.
I can hear you. I had to turn my mic off. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Do you have, how's your idea coming for the project that's due on Saturday? You submitted a topic to me.
Yeah, I submitted two of them though. I was torn between either doing with leadership and coaching or social media with teenagers.
Okay. Any thoughts on how you might proceed, or do you need any suggestions or questions regarding that?
Not really. I'm kind of used to it at this point. I'm kind of comfortable with using the tools that we have. So it's just a matter of me starting and writing it.
Okay. Okay. Are you leaning towards one of the two topics?
The social media one is more easier for me because I've done research on that in the past, but I think I might lean more towards the leadership and coaching.
So leadership and coaching? Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, and you do know we have a journal, like Journal of Sports communication that might have quite a bit in it. I've also noticed that the Journal of Applied Communication Research does a lot on coaches and mentoring. There's some articles on communication. Can you go back to our database, Elizabeth?
Well, Dr. Proctor, I was thinking more on the lines of coaching within a leadership role. So not really sports coaching, but coaching as a leader. So coaching your employees.
Oh, coaching and mentoring,
yeah.
That type of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So
okay. Yeah, there's quite a bit on mentoring. I think they use the word mentoring as opposed to coaches, but maybe Elizabeth can do a little searching on that. Because when I've ever typed in coaches, or my students have, they're interested in like sports coaches, not.
Okay.
It's funny that we're talking about this. I also would have initially thought just simply mentoring. The very first article says the coaching and mentoring process, the obvious knowledge and skill set for organizational communication professors. You may want to leave coaching out or choose one or the other. You can try one and then the other because you may not find both in the same article like this. It was just kind of funny that that happened to be the one that popped up. It's interesting too to just kind of take a look at some of the things that are coming up as far as subjects like communication in organizations, study and teaching.
Okay.
Here's like mentoring and education, organizational sociology, et cetera, et cetera. So this ought to be really interesting. It'll be cool to see what kind of things you pull up for this.
Yeah, that's interesting. Understanding
Okay.
mentoring in organizations.
Where was that? Oh, there we go. Yeah, understanding e-mentoring. Yeah.
In organizations. Yeah, it looks like there's some research-based articles on that topic. So yeah, I think it's a great topic.
Okay.
Mentoring, a promising strategy for creating and sustaining a learning organization.
Yeah, our mentoring relationships, helping organization, exploration of mentee-mentor organization implications. Yeah. Communication quarterly, 1999. Yeah. It's a little
I
old.
have a couple of, I already have a couple of books that I was just going to pull from that I have at work back when I was in leadership. So like coaching high performers and all of that.
Yeah, that would work for your one, well, like for this week, you know, you need 4 research-based articles, a book, and a web resource. And as long as that, you know, book deals with mentoring,
It does.
that would be great. And then I would do a little bit of searching to see if there's even a better one, but,
Okay.
you know, that's kind of your call in terms of the quality and if it's addressing what it is you're interested in.
Okay.
Other questions? Oh, and by the way, ebooks are fine for, because this week you just need a reference list, but you're going to be asked to like interlibrary loan the book or get an ebook. Just be sure that you can get access to the book, not just a reference of that book. That's a book that you're going to want to be able to access in either ebook format or print format.
Dr. Proctor, this is Alma again.
Yeah.
Once we submit our references on Saturday, are we locked into those, or if we find something else that we feel is more relevant than something we've already added to our reference list, what would you say on that?
I definitely say you could, you know, drop references and be adding references, because part 2 and then there's a part 3 of the portfolio, they all build on each other.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
Thank
that's
you.
why when I glance at the references, especially the 4 articles, I want to make sure that there are articles that you could do the next part with, which is annotating and then eventually dissecting the articles into the different questions that we ask of quantitative and qualitative. So
Great.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Alma, are you feeling comfortable in terms of going back to your initial question in terms of finding a web resource? Because now that Elizabeth has the screen up, you know, we could search some. Would that be helpful, or how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, that would be great. Just, you know, I guess my question was, I know I had gone on to that Google Scholar as just, you know, a starting point, but now you both talked about going to places that maybe specialize in that, or I guess in our reading I saw that if it ends in like an edu.gov, those seem to be a little more reliable and have more substance to them. So, but it would be great if we could look at something through the database. I would appreciate that.
Refresh me on your topic one more time, please, Alma.
Women in leadership and communication style.
So I did a quick, I searched this similarly to how I would search the database, although you don't necessarily have to do it exactly the way I did, but it helps to cut out some of the extra stuff for it to interpret. And for example, one of the things I noticed scrolling down through here, as you know, on Google, you can see titles and then the URLs. So that kind of helps give you an idea of what you're looking at. And for example, this resource down here, Women's Leadership Style Boss Plus from Psychology Today, it might be something you want to check out.
Okay.
A little further down, there is something from scholarsarchive.jw.edu, outcomes and effects of women in leadership roles. If I click this, it looks like it was probably a graduate paper of some kind that has been submitted. Presumably, it says it's a position paper. So it was something somebody did for a class. This may be something you want to look at, even if it's just to go to the very end and see what kind of resources the person used.
The reference list, okay.
That's an EDU source. So that would be probably something that would be classified as either a white paper or gray literature, depending on the content of it. It's something that was scholarly, but it was not peer-reviewed, good for information, perhaps. Here's another one on outcomes and effectiveness of women in leadership roles from that same, that might be the one I just looked at. But it also gave some suggestions for searches that you may want to try out there. So does that kind of give you the idea of how to kind of skim through there and see?
Yep, sounds good. I will work on that. Thank you so much, Elizabeth and Dr. Proctor.
Yeah, and I also sometimes in that search, Elizabeth, and I don't know if it's kind of cheating or whatever, but if you go up to your search, could you add like websites first?
I know there's a way to do this, and I'm trying to remember, there's a specific way you can put that in there where you're specifying. Are you talking about when you're specifying the .edu or .org ending?
Yeah, so I can get like, you know, like if University of Nebraska Lincoln, they have a huge organizational communication, and yeah, so I was thinking like educational websites or government websites on women in organizations or.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how you do that. There is a command that you can put in that to do that very thing.
Oh, see, I always just type website. Oh, search domain. Oh.
Here we go. So if I do this, let me back up. And you mentioned which website, Diane?
Oh, I don't know. I was just thinking if like a university or the government had a website that that focused on women in organization.
So if I tell it bracket site:\edu and bracket, and then put in my search terms, you'll see skimming down through here that all of my URLs end in .edu.
Wow.
Oh yeah, so like that communication for strategies for women in leadership, that might be a website.
Yeah, weatherhead.case.edu. So.
Oh, it's a case study.
Actually, it's probably from Case Western or something of
Case
that nature.
University.
Yep,
Yeah.
Case Western Reserve. So that would certainly be a way to do that. You can do the same thing. We did .edu. Certainly, you can do .org. So that might be.
I've heard of that before. That's cool.
There we go.
Awesome.
So now
Thank you.
switched. Absolutely. So now we switched to everything being from a .org website. So that's another way you can control where it's searching.
Yeah, and so it narrows it down to just those types of EDUs or .govs.
You got it. I like the sounds of this one, Women Rising the Unseen Barriers from Harvard Business Review. That might be interesting too.
Okay.
What's your leadership communication style from ihrsa.org?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, have fun with that. You're probably going to discover some really interesting things.
Yeah. And that's what we mean by a website.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Now the trick is citing websites, but that we're going to talk about that this week in discussion. I can get books down and journals down. It's these tricky little ones that are.
While we got everybody together, I would love to point something out on our website. From our fabulous friends at OWL, if I go under help on the library website and I drop down to citation style guides, two things I'll highlight that these are built off of the Blue Manual, so it's the basis for everything. Certainly that's the foundation for all of the things. But two things, first of all, the citation comparison chart is something that I love this so much. It's from the OWL, the Online Writing Lab at Purdue. And for some reason, it's kind of obscure, but I think it's super helpful, especially if you're from the MLA world and you're visual and you want to see how that's changed from MLA to APA. MLA is in the first column and APA is in the second. If you don't care about the comparison, just focus on the middle. Bottom line is, when you build your references, it's helpful if you make your reference list first, because you're going to build your in-text citation off of that reference list the way that it's cited. And it starts out by talking about, when you cite a book, here's what it generally looks like. But then it shows you variations. So if it's one author, it looks like this, two or three, and so on. And those kinds of rules for the authors apply to the journal articles as well. So you can flip back and forth between the different kinds. But as you scroll down, you'll see that the address is, okay, if your author is corporate, or what happens when I don't know my author. And we keep on going through here, and then it'll get into articles and periodicals. So it'll address magazines and scholarly journals and so on. And then it gets into online sources. And as you can imagine, the APA manual, the last time it was updated was 2010. And there's a lot that's happened in the online world since then. And they continue to build off of the same principles, but sometimes things aren't, for me, as well defined as I would like to see them. So this is a really great place to go for some initial instruction on those kinds of things to help you figure out how to do that. Another place I personally like to go, and we do have it linked here. Let me minimize this a hair so I can find my tabs again. If I go back to our website, another place that's really helpful is the APA style blog. It is written by the people who wrote the APA book, and what they're doing is answering people's write-in questions. And what's helpful about this is, yes, it's a blog, so it goes from most recent to oldest, but over here in their custom search bar, you can type in something specific. So let's say you found a TED Talk that was fantastic and it was posted on YouTube. And you want to know how you cite a YouTube video, and you're like, the manual just doesn't tell me anything. If I search YouTube, it will show me the different entries that talk about how to cite a YouTube. This one is about a YouTube comment. Let me back up. I should have clicked a different one. This one talks about a channel. This one talks about a reference for YouTube video, and so on. So even some of the stuff that's specifically in the book, if you don't like the way they explained it, sometimes going and searching it here, somebody will have asked a question and they will have gone into more detail. And what's great is, excuse me, when you get in here, it's being addressed by someone from APA. This isn't a random user who's responding, it's somebody who's from their organization. And then finally, the last thing I would mention about APA is we also subscribe to APA Style Central, which is also from the APA people. You see a theme here. But certainly I can come to some place like this Learn tab, and I can search over here in the Learning Center to find out things. For example, maybe you want them to illustrate for you how to do headings in your papers. And it will say that they've got 3 quick guides, 1 tutorial, 2 sample papers, and so on. And so you can review these different things. Here's a quick guide that talks about it, for example. And you can review through these different tools that they've got. I guess that one has to do with colon, so that wasn't a very good example. But you can look at these different things. You can look at paper samples and so on to give you some ideas. on how to do certain things. So there's some additional helps in addition to the blue book. Plus, you can always reach out and ask for help, so don't despair. I know some people get real stressed out about APA. Don't. Just try not to.
Elizabeth, in our database, Communication Mass Media Complete, can you show how we can look at where we'll do the citations for you, but they don't do them correctly? So
Let's go back to this results list.
Okay, yeah.
Just go ahead and click on this first one. When you click on an article in the database, I need to move my little screen here. Hang on a second. So what we're seeing on the screen right now is the article's record, which includes our abstract, subject terms, and so on. To the left is the full text link if one exists, which in most cases it does, and in this one it does. To the right are some additional database tools, and over here is one that says cite. I always give a very strong caveat about using this particular tool, and that's the fact that there are often quite a few errors. The thing that is helpful about this is if you're having trouble finding particular elements about it, like maybe you're having trouble identifying the page numbers, or you're having trouble with something specific like that, it will put them in the right order. But invariably there's an issue, and I can look at this and tell you right now that there's problems with the way they cited this. If you look at your rules, for example, about how you do titles of articles, this is wrong. Because they're using capital and lowercase throughout the entire title, and that's not how you do article titles. Just like you would not capitalize the O and of in the journal title. So again, you can use it to help inform you, but you really need to follow what the book says, because this is not correct the way it stands.
Yeah, so just be careful. I've seen students oftentimes just cut and paste this into their reference list, and that's really problematic. And it doesn't double space it, and capitalization particularly is problematic. But it's a good structure. It's as long as you can go through and correct it.
Yeah.
Just be careful with using any citation machine. What do they call them, Elizabeth? Citation machines? I don't know. Just be careful. But it's a good tool.
Yeah.
So any other questions, group? I know we've kept you about an hour. How can we help? Any?
I have a question. With the new say references, there's a folder where you can click there, and I've never used that, but I just know some resources. Can we use that, or will it look up, and where do I find log out? And then let's say if I log in tomorrow.
Elizabeth, did you get that? For some reason, I didn't get that.
It was cutting out really badly, and I didn't catch all that.
Okay. Can you hear me a little bit better?
Yes.
I think my phone is breaking up. I had to move into another room because it died. I'm trying to find out, there's a folder that you can save in when you pull your articles. Will those articles still be there when I log back in, and where do I folder?
Okay, I got you now. By personal preference, I don't personally use that, but if it's your thing, absolutely feel free to do so. I find it more helpful to create my own folder on my computer or in the cloud and put it there. Here's the issue. What you have to do every time is when you want to save something into the folder in the database, you have to come up here and sign in. If you put it in the folder without signing in, it's only there temporarily, and when you log out or you walk away from the database, it will time out after 30 minutes and dump the folder. So you have to make sure that you've created a free account and sign in every single time to save it. And sometimes people forget to do that, and if you forget to do that, you lose everything you just did. But if you remember to do that and you want to do it, absolutely feel free to use this tool. It's free. If you're coming for the first time, go down to where it says don't have an account, create one now. in case I didn't explain where I was at before, I apologize. So if you're in the database, come up here to where it says sign in. Click where it says sign in. And if you don't yet have one, you'll do exactly that. You'll come down here to the very bottom and click create one now. And fill out all of the field requests. This is different than the one that you use through the school. If you want to use the same credentials and you want to assign it that way, that is entirely up to you, but we don't have access to this information, so make sure you put it in a safe place. Once you've finished and you hit continue, then you can start to save items. Let me see if I can remember how to get, nope, that's ProQuest. I don't know if I remember how to get into mine. That's how often I don't use it. That way you can kind of, if I can get it to sign in, I can show you what the structure looks like so you can decide if you want to do it or not. It's thinking. At any rate, while it's thinking, it'll have some different folders to the left-hand side that you can name folders, you can create folders, you can even save entire searches. But again, you need to remember to sign in every time so that it doesn't lose what you're doing. And for whatever reason, it's not signing in, it's just spinning. Do we have any other questions?
Elizabeth, this is Alma again, just super quick. I don't want to keep us too much longer, but when I went into like the SAU library and then I pulled up an article, and then off to this on the right-hand side, and I'm hoping I'm in the right place that I'm thinking at, it said a place that I could cite like where I could cite it, and then it gave me options for APA, Chicago, MLA, and all other kinds. But when I looked at it again compared to what the book was doing, it like, I think you mentioned it sometime a little bit ago where it like capitalized the entire title of the article. And so I just wondered how reliable that was. Or if I'm thinking I'm in a different spot and I'm not remembering where I was.
I think you're describing that citation tool that's in the database, and as far as reliability, it will pull the correct information, but it will not format it correctly all the time. So you have to check it against your book every single time.
Got it. Yeah, because I'm like, should I use it? And then it capitalized everything. And I looked at it compared to the book, and the book just capitalized the first word, and then it didn't like it. I'm thinking it like italicized the journal title, but the book said not to, or vice versa. I'm not sure.
Yeah, when you're talking about journal articles, what it should look like is last name, comma, first initial, and if there's a middle initial, it's a period space, middle initial, period. If there's more to do with that. Year in parentheses, you end that with a period, and then your journal article title. The only words you capitalize are going to be the first word, proper nouns, and words directly after a colon. And you'll find often in the citation tool, they're capitalizing every single word, or sometimes they'll put it in all caps, neither of which is correct.
Okay.
You may still find formatting issues with the journal title as well, but the journal article title is where you see the most problems. But yeah, you definitely want to check your book.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It is 10 after 9, and if you need to exit out, feel free to exit out and enjoy your evening, the rest of